Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's conference, Investment Opportunities in the Panamanian Banking System, presented by ProPanama, the National Authority for the Attraction of Investments and Promotion of Exports, and PANUS, the Panama-U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm Stephanie Pragnell from the ProPanama Investments team, and on behalf of ProPanama and PANUS, I would like to thank our esteemed speakers, panelists, and audience for joining us today. To begin, please note that this event will be held in English in its entirety. We will have simultaneous translation into the Spanish language for our audience. Tendremos traducción simultánea al español. Para escuchar este evento en español, por favor presione el botón Interpretación, haga clic en Español y seleccione la opción Silenciar audio original. We will first begin with words from our keynote speakers and special guests, followed by a conference featuring notable figures of banking's public and private sector, moderated by Ambassador Carmen Gisela Vergara, Executive Director of ProPanama, followed by a question and answer section and closing statements. Please make sure to look at our screen to see where the interpretation button can be pressed if you would like to receive your interpretation in Spanish. To start, we would like to warmly welcome Ambassador Vergara, who will be giving opening statements. On your screen, briefly, you will see a version of her biography. Ambassador Vergara is a professional with more than 25 years of experience in commercial law, foreign investment, foreign trade, business development, trade negotiations, and facilitation in both public and private sectors. In previous roles, she has served as Executive Director of FECAICA and CIECA, Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade of Panama, Minister of Commerce and Industry, and Manager of the Business Accelerator at the City of Knowledge, amongst other important roles. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good morning to everyone, or good time of the day, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us this morning for this conference, which we think is very relevant in today's world and in the post-pandemic recovery process to show you a little bit of what Panama has to offer in the context of the world's recovery process, specifically in the financial and banking service sector. And we have a star-studded panel for you today, starting with the Minister for Investments for Panama, His Excellency Jose Alejandro Rojas, who will make an introduction on Panama's environment in terms of investment, especially in the banking sector, that then will be followed by the discussions from the panel of experts that we have gathered for you this morning. And I want to especially thank all of the panelists for coming together for this event. We have the representatives from the Panama private and public banking sector and our very good friends from El Banco de Santander. So I am sure that you will have a lot of very relevant information on Panama and on the opportunities that we have to offer in this sector. And I want to give a special warm welcome to our very good friend, William Martinez, the head of PANUS, one of our strategic allies, with whom we have been doing a lot of activities this year. And we were recently in Washington and in New York, again, with PANUS, in a very important event with investors, and we got to meet our friends from Banco de Santander through Mr. William Martinez, so you will be hearing from him also after Minister Rojas' remarks. And so with nothing further, I will give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Jose Alejandro Rojas, for his introduction into Panama's business environment and investment opportunities in the banking sector. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Good morning, everyone. William Martinez de Vilasco, co-founder and chair of the Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and to all of our distinguished panelists. It is a pleasure to be here among you today to discuss the investment climate in Panama and how the government is taking significant measures to reactivate its economy. For the national government, led by President Laurentino Cortizo Cohen, it is important to maintain an open, participatory, and continuous dialogue with the private sector to promote economic development and the creation of more and better jobs. As a government, we have established the necessary conditions to strengthen confidence and normalcy in the wake of the challenges presented by a global pandemic. We have come a long way and identified from the outset that safeguarding democracy and social policy to a solid and sustainable recovery. We advanced in the digitalization of government processes, created fiscal incentives and legal frameworks for the attraction of foreign direct investment, and are successfully carrying out the COVID-19 vaccination strategy. We recognize the importance of having agile processes for investors, and in this sense, Panama has experienced a massive digitalization of its government. We passed a new law that requires all government institutions to improve and digitalize all their processes, providing efficiency and transparency, a solid institutional framework reliable for all relevant actors. Offering incentives to investors is another. Incentives for tourism projects and incentives in manufacturing, such as the MLO for manufacturing services for multinational companies. Another example to encourage and attract investments is a recently sanctioned qualified investor law, where any investor who invests $500,000 or more in sectors that need to be developed and boosted, such as real estate, construction, capital investments, will have access to permanent Panamanian residency. But for the first 2 years, the investment in real estate needs only to be $300,000. Foreign direct investment in Panama and maximizing the profitability of multinational companies established in our country will continue to be one of the engines of economic recovery and growth. Following President Laurentino Cortizo Cohen's roadmap to promote a favorable environment for business, facilitate good investments with an open door policy, we consider it very valuable to continue forging alliances between the public and private sectors with the aim of moving forward together in sustainable economic development, more digital and more efficient. As history has shown us, Panama has a long being a global activity with the rest of the world has allowed the isthmus to facilitate trade routes to the region and the world. Panama has the best social and political stability in the region. The fact that Panama has 23 free trade agreements marks an opportunity to reach a potential market of more than 1.3 billion consumers. With special economic zones and regimes that have a modern infrastructure, in addition to tax, immigration, and labor benefits created so that companies in Panama have the ideal business environment to be successful. Panama has become one of the best destinations in the Americas to do business. We're ready to receive investors, guaranteeing a fair and transparent investment climate where your investments can be executed in a dynamic and agile way. On behalf of the President of Panama, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Pro-Panama for inviting me to participate in this important event today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Your Excellency. I am pleased now to present Mr. William Martinez de Vilasco. He is the chairman and co-founder of PANUS, the Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He has worked at the intersection of federal, state, and local business policy, foreign affairs, and government relations for 23 years, and is an expert in Latin American government relations and business development. He is a member of the National Press Club International Correspondence Committee and the American Association of Civil Engineers, among other prestigious organizations. Thank you for joining us today and sharing a few words with us, Mr. Martinez de Vilasco.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here to co-host this event and particularly to have the presence of Minister Rojas among us. Thank you also, Ambassador Carmen, for your kind words. We are a young organization, but already very active and growing very fast. The Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce is an organization that we strive to connect our active network of business and cultural representatives, companies and organizations. We organize events, roundtables, workshops, dinners and briefings, and among other things. We also serve to connect our members and represent Panama and US and foster trade and cultural ties between both countries. We provide a brand exposure to our members, and we also rather uniquely seek to not just represent companies that wish to trade between Panama and grow business between Panama and the US transactionally, but also we represent rather uniquely companies that from all over the world who want to grow or establish presence in Latin America through Panama as the hub for Latin America. This is something that's quite unique within the Chambers of Commerce, and serves to bring the profile of Panama to the top level of international trade, which so richly deserves. We have multiple services for members. We provide PANUS, the Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We provide multiple services to our members, legal advisory, advisory on imports and exports, and provide visas for those companies and organizations, individuals who wish to establish and work in the United States. It's again a real pleasure to be in this event, and to have Charles Moser, General Manager of Santander. Santander is one of the largest banks in the world, and the number one bank throughout all Latin America in capital assets and revenues. So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, William. As you mentioned, I head up the sovereign coverage of Santander Investment Securities. For us at Santander, it is truly an honor to be part of this panel on the Panamanian banking system with such a distinguished group. So thank you all for having joined us on this important event. As a Spanish bank with a leading presence in a number of the largest countries in the region, I thought it might be useful to share why of late we've become more interested in the Panamanian market as well. In relation to many other countries in the region, Panama is doing extremely well in dealing with the challenges that the past 2 years have dealt us. And therefore, it's an attractive destination for foreign capital. These really aren't easy times for any country in the hemisphere, but Panama has navigated these choppy waters very well. The result of the efforts of President Cortizo and his very capable cabinet. As a result of their deft management, Panama is looking at a stronger recovery than many of the other countries in the region. And we at Santander very much want to be a part of that recovery. I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes discussing not only the measures that have allowed Panama to navigate the pandemic with its economic fallout, but then focus on the ample areas of opportunity and growth for institutions like Santander in the market and the role that we as banks can play to help materialize these opportunities. Panama was more affected than most countries in the region by the pandemic, given its unique characteristics. Panama relies on international trade, on international travel and finance. It's a relatively open economy. And as a gateway to the region, it was exceptionally exposed to the pandemic and the spread of the virus. Yet the government took effective measures early, invested heavily to maintain the safety net for the population during the necessary lockdowns. And more recently, the government has very aggressively pursued vaccinations. Today, Panama has one of the highest vaccination rates in Latin America at roughly 70%. That opens the door to an economic rebound, which the IMF sees as robust. For 2021, the IMF projects GDP growth around 12%, which is well above the regional peers, and a growth rate of 5% is predicted for 2022. Panama will indeed resume its role as one of the fastest growing economies in the hemisphere. And along with this growth come opportunities. We at Santander are proud to have designed the international Babono instrument and to have placed 1.25 billion of their longest ever internationally placed local instrument. Excuse me. Why does this matter? During the financial crisis related to COVID, local banks faced liquidity pressures and had to reduce their holdings in local bonds. By internationalizing the local curve through this transaction and others, Panama increased the liquidity of its local banks and facilitated access of international investors to this instrument. The instrument is becoming more internationalized and therefore has a much broader demand base to absorb any sort of crisis. Going forward, Panama is focused on promoting its recovery through investment in infrastructure. And there are a couple of projects that I thought would be useful to talk about. There are significant public investments on the way today, including the Metro Line 3. There's a tunnel under the Bridge of the Americas. There are metro extensions. There's the Cinta Costera, as well as the new Children's Hospital. On the PPP side, there are also over $1.5 billion in projects, including maintenance of 2,000 kilometers of roads, new highways like the one that connects Arijan and Puerto Caimito, and the Corredor Norte. And there are also very significant investment opportunities in state entities like the Authority of the Canal of Panama and ETESA with its energy transmission projects. Those projects also offer a multitude of financing and investment opportunities for banks like Santander. We at Santander see the opportunities and very much want to be part of the next phase of Panama's growth. As a top underwriter of bonds in Latin America, we're proud to have been part of Panama's last transaction. As a leading infrastructure investor and structurer in the region, we see the opportunity Panama represents as one of the few places offering the optimal balance of stability, credit quality, a very solid government, and growth opportunities. We believe financial institutions like Santander are uniquely positioned to help materialize these initiatives. We are the link between the government, the construction companies, infrastructure operators, financiers, and institutional investors. And we can structure, underwrite, provide direct financing, and source institutional investors to make all these projects a reality. And the current administration is doing a lot to facilitate these projects. Minister Martinez has made good progress with the Zonas Francas and the Sede Empresarial Multinacional initiatives. Additionally, the Minera Panama negotiations represent not only one of the largest potential sources of incremental income for Panama, but also an opportunity to demonstrate the commitment Panama has to the balance between protecting the environment and promoting foreign investment and growth. I also want to highlight the excellent work being done in the PPP space by Minister Savong and his team. In addition to the projects, there are initiatives to increase transparency and digitalization of the processes, as Minister Rojas mentioned. And while much of the construction will be paid for upfront, there are opportunities to finance the builders as well. Additionally, we understand there have been a series of delegations that have met with U.S. trade representatives and others on a variety of initiatives to facilitate commerce between countries. And as Mr. Rojas mentioned, Panama has a number of bilateral treaties that also serve free trade and will benefit Panama. And it's nice to see a world in which trade is opening again after the last couple of years where we saw trade being restricted. In summation, we're honored to be part of this panel on banking in Panama to hear in greater detail what the opportunities are and how we as international investors and bankers can participate to help in Panama's reactivation. You have our commitment that we will be part of this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moser, for your words on Panama banking sector. We see that you have been doing your homework there and getting to know our banking sector and the business opportunities here in Panama. But now I would like to introduce a very good friend of Pro-Panama, Mr. Carlos Vergido, who is the executive president of the Panamanian Banking Association. And you can see his bio on the screen momentarily. But Mr. Vergido is managing partner at KPK Lawyers since 2005, a firm specializing in insurance law and corporate commercial tax, real estate, and wealth tax. So he holds a degree in business administration with emphasis in accounting from E. Claiborne Robbins School of Business at the University of Richmond in Virginia. And he is an attorney from the Universidad Católica Santa María la Antigua of Panama, cum laude. He's held several leadership positions in insurance companies and banks in Panama and in civil society organizations. He was included in the AM Best Directory of Recommended Insurance Lawyers since 2015, and someone who really knows our banking sector from the private sector perspective. So we're very honored and glad that he could make the time to be with us this morning. And he's going to share with us from the private sector perspective how they see the banking and financial services center playing a role in the recovery process of Panama and of the region. So, Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much to my very good friend, Her Excellency Ambassador Carmen Gisela Vergara, which I have the pleasure and honor of knowing for so many years. And congratulations on your continued success in the different roles you have played as Panama strives to become ever more developed and reach new heights. This is what we should all aim for. And I'm sure most of us, or at least on the Panamanian side of this important meeting today, would agree that our goal really as a nation is to be part of the first world in the sense that we want all to provide our population with a standard of living that is adequate and comparable to that of the best countries in the world, which we agree we're all on that path. Good morning to His Excellency Minister Rojas. A pleasure to see you today. My friend William Martinez from Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a new organization that is striving to get together and ever closer ties with the investment community, especially that of the United States, and all of you that are with us here this morning. Welcome to this part of the conference. And I'd like to start by pointing out several metrics about our banking system. We have 117 years of history possessing a banking sector that has been one of the pillars of our development in this country, especially, very especially, since 1970, when the government of Panama back then launched what is now called the International Banking Center of Panama, which with a framework of laws that basically potentiated and put a lot of impulse into developing this banking system to become and to realize its potential, and we have been doing that ever since. Right now, the International Banking Center of Panama counts with 68 banks from many different countries of the world, including many banks from Latin America and also from Brazil, the United States, South Korea, some European countries, and very recently the addition of two of the largest banks in the world, those from the Republic of China, including the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC, and the Bank of China, which are new entrants into this market. I think most of our current success stands on the solid regulatory path that has been achieved through this International Banking Center law, and the independence and the high quality regulation and the stability of that regulation along those last 50 years, which has been able to project Panama in a very, very positive light in the financial community in the whole world. As you can see in this graph, we have some of the best known brands in the world, including Citibank, Scotiabank, JP Morgan Chase, UBS from North America, also all multi-Latin banks such as Back Corporation and Banismo, or what is called in Colombia, Grupo Sura, which is part of the Bancolombia franchise there. And also those two huge banks from China, which we mentioned before. It is important to put in perspective that the Panamanian banking system, the international banking system of Panama, currently has an aggregate of almost $132 billion in assets in a country that is much smaller than most of those countries in the world, which boast financial centers comparable to this one. Some of the metrics that we would like to point out as part of the strength or part of the attractiveness that has brought to Panama this immense pool of capital, of resources, and the financial institutions that are here. I would like to point out the connectivity of our country. Those familiar with Panama and its history will soon remember that part of what makes this country unique has been cemented over its very unique geographical location, which was very early taken into consideration by Panama's business community to leverage that connectivity in order to provide services to the wider world and not just focus on the internal market of a very small country. But instead of doing that, we have been able as a country, working with governments ever since the time when Panama was part of the Spanish Empire in the 17th and 18th centuries, to leverage that position in order to serve the needs of the wider markets beyond our frontiers and our seas. And we have done many things in order to cement that location and take advantage of it, including the US dollar being our medium of exchange, our legal tender currency, ever since the inception of the Republic of Panama back in 1903. The strategic location that we have has been a gateway for the whole Latin America region and beyond, even before the Republic was born. The financial stability and the long-term, long-standing character of the International Banking Corporation, a first-class, first-rate telecommunications and a secure country, which guarantees that those who come to participate in this market are really well served by first-class infrastructure and investment grade for the country for the past 8 years, and an efficient and reliable regulation and supervision, which has been able to attract what we have today, the many banks that I mentioned, some of them working under the general license type of activity, others in the international license, and others in the representation license, which I'll explain very briefly. Basically, the international license, which might be of a special interest today for those of you thinking about investing in Panama, allows a bank with offices in Panama to raise deposits outside of Panama and to do credit lending activities outside of Panama and not to the final consumers. And this has attracted many players from Latin America, especially, and Europe, to have banking operations in Panama that are used for that, for conducting international trade and financing operations from Panama. You also have a general license, which, besides allowing those activities that are normally carried out by an international licensed bank, are also able to receive deposits from the internal market in Panama and to lend directly to the end consumer in Panama, which is obviously it is the most important category of banks operating in Panama and those who hold the bulk of the banking activity. And then you have the representative license, which basically allows different banks from the world to have an office in Panama from where to conduct certain contact and client prospecting activities, directing corporate type of activities and functions internationally mostly. As I mentioned, the total assets of the banking system during the last year have even increased. We have now $132,000 million in assets, which is a slight rise from last year, even through the thick and most difficult part of the pandemic crisis. And our deposits currently at the International Banking Center stand at almost $97 billion, which is also representative of a slight increase of 2.9%, again, during the pandemic. It's very important to note that this remains deposits, both local and international, with a breakdown of 64% local and 36% international, remain the most important funding source for the banking system in Panama, with the balance, maybe some $37,000 comprised of financing through bonds obtained through the international banking community and the capital markets, and the equity provided by the investors in those banks. Some of the things that make Panama a very interesting place to invest, both in the banking and the wider economic system, represents the resiliency that Panama has shown along the years in maintaining relatively high rates of economic growth. I am glad to say that the projection that we were looking at a couple of months ago to have a growth of 9.9% as an average of the different projections has now been upgraded to 12%, which is very welcome news. The inflation, historically low, currently stands at 1.4%, and it shouldn't increase that much, even though the whole world is reeling from high inflation rates historically. High inflation rates, Panama has been able to keep it relatively low. We have some challenges in kickstarting the unemployment situation and trying to reduce that, as we have still some work to do there. In terms of other advantages, the strategic location not only means geographical one, but and logistical, mechanical ones, but being in Panama makes us puts us at the center of a large pool of wealth, which is located in Latin America. There's a recent study by Credit Suisse, Global Wealth Data Book, that says that Panama is close to $34,000 million households in Colombia, for example, 300,000 in Brazil, 30,000 in Argentina, $66,000 million wealth households in Chile, for example. Mexico would have 171 million, which makes Panama, again, a very interesting location to invest, to try to serve that fortunes from Panama and to leverage the location, again, to do all sorts of financial activities. As Mr. Moser mentioned before, we also are attractive because Panama as a business hub has always been attractive, and that is very well illustrated by one of the widest networks of free trade agreements that Panama has signed with many countries in the world, including the United States, the European Union, some of the large South American countries, and including a continuation treaty with the United Kingdom, which I'm sure will keep Panama as an attractive target for investment in commercial, industrial, and all sorts of other activities like logistics. Important to notice the insurance industry. The Americas is home to a fairly large insurance and reinsurance market. Panama is a very strategic position to serve both North and South America as a reinsurance hub. It also could be a very important hub for insuring the more than 12,000 vessels that pass through the Panama Canal each year, making it an ideal location to conduct all sorts of insurance-related activities. It's important to note that approximately 5% of the world maritime commerce goes through the Panama Canal each year. Cementing that reputation for attracting capital into the banking system are very positive criteria when measuring our profitability. For example, the return on assets situation, which you can see did plummet dramatically in 2020 as expected, both in terms of return on assets and return on equity, but has steadily started to recover, and we expect to go back to better levels in the year 2023, probably as the economy of Panama rebounds, and with it the fortunes of all commercial and banking activities. Our capital adequacy ratios and liquidities have also been resilient, very well kept, making it very secure. A fact that has even been recognized by some of the leading organizations in the world that are pursuing ratings of all kinds, like the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and Fitch Ratings. In the last available competitiveness report published by the World Economic Forum, Panama was ranked very well. For example, our financial system was considered to be the second in the whole Latin America region in terms of its soundness on the development. It is considered to be the 16th most solid banking or more sound banking system in the whole world. That for a country of 4.5 million inhabitants is no small feat. It's a huge achievement. Also important for Panama in its competitiveness is the macro stability, economic stability, the size of its product market, and the health services provided to the population. Even the World Bank, in its doing business report, ranks Panama very highly. In this case, it's considered the 25th economy in the world with ease to getting credit. So that makes it a very important factor when deciding where to allocate your investments. What lies ahead? Inclusion. Panama is very well ranked in terms of the access and inclusion, the financial inclusion of its population, being ranked second to Chile in terms of access and use, and #1 in Latin America in terms of the quality of the financial services available in Panama. That, however, has always been one of our major topics as a country, which is it's okay to be compared with the best of Latin America, but we really aim to compare ourselves to the best in the world. And that therein lies some of the huge opportunities to investing in Panama. And the gap that remains between Panama and the first world countries, and the more developed countries in the world, will need enormous investments that will require much financing. So therefore, that's one of the main opportunities. One of my predecessors in the talk today, Mr. Moser, already spoke about the huge pipeline of private-public investments and partnerships with a potential pipeline of more than $1.9 billion just in public and private investment, which should be able to concentrate minds to pursue opportunities in the financing of this. Also, we have a huge, still important, even though we are, as I said before, well compared with the rest of Latin America, we remain a country where financial inclusion needs to be achieved in a wider scale. And for that, we will need to deploy many assets, many innovative arrangements, including the whole fintech world, the whole digitalization of our economy. And in doing that, I'm sure we will need a lot of international investment, including those coming from the financial sector. Our country also needs to invest heavily in other things like education and infrastructure, health, improving our very good logistical network, and try to leverage our excellent climate for business in that effort to try to go to the first world. And with that, I believe I have concluded my allotted time. I thank you all very much, and I'm open to any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos, for your excellent presentation. And I'm sure that we all learned a lot about the banking sector in Panama. And financial inclusion remains job #1, as was recognized by MasterCard, who signed an agreement with the government of Panama precisely to pursue this issue and make use of the digital hub that Panama has to offer, as was explained by Minister Rojas in his remarks. And we're going to have him also for the Q&A part of the program. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to send them through the chat. And now we're going to hear from the government's perspective and from the Superintendent of Banks, also a very good friend of Pro-Panama. We have been working together for many years. And so it is with a special pleasure that I introduce to you Mr. Amaury Castillo, the Superintendent of Banks of Panama. He has a degree in law and political science, and he's an external consultant specialized in legal, banking, regulatory, and strategic matters with 20 years of experience in the financial sector. He has served as advisor to the Superintendent of Banks for matters related to the promotion of Panama as an international banking center, and he was General Secretary of the Superintendency of Banks, as well as advisor to the Board of Directors of the Superintendency of Securities Market. In the public sector, he has served as technical advisor to the Program for the Improvement of Transparency and Integrity of the Panamanian Financial System. His experience in the private sector includes his participation in several boards of directors and interdependent director for local and international banking institutions. He has represented Panama in multiple international and regional forums related to the financial sector, including 2 FATF plenary meetings and 2 CFATF plenary meetings. Founding partner of the law firm and consulting firm Amaury Castillo and Company, and member of the Panamanian Bar Association. So it is my very great pleasure to leave the floor to the Superintendent of Banks, who is going to talk to us about the banking sector in Panama, the regulations, and the ease to do business with the banking and financial services sector. So Amaury, the floor is yours.
Before we begin, I would like to mention that Superintendent Amaury Castillo will be presenting in Spanish. To those of you who would like to listen to the interpretation in English, please press the button at the bottom right of the screen, click on English, and choose the option Silence Original Audio. Should you wish to hear him in Spanish, please select Spanish and deselect the Silence Original Audio for the duration of this of his presentation. And then if you would like to switch back to English, then you would need to switch back. If you have any questions, please contact us directly on how to do this. And welcome, Superintendent Castillo, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to confirm, if you look in the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation.
No, it's not on screen yet.
Let me try it again.
Very good. There you are. Yes.
Well, thank you very much again. I would like to thank you to Panama and to PAN USA for this invitation. I really thanks again to Ambassador Vergara this opportunity to share with you valuable information about the Panama and International Banking Center. Unfortunately, we prepared this presentation in Spanish. I will do it in Spanish, so I will switch to Spanish at this time. Creemos que es una excelente oportunidad para dar a conocer en este foro no solamente los atractivos de tener una plaza panameña bancaria de la calidad que tenemos, sino también para dar a conocer algunas de las adecuaciones normativas en el ambiente regulatorio bancario que se han venido implementando en los últimos años. Y muy probablemente, como bien lo expresaron mis colegas anteriormente, toda esa cantidad de acciones y medidas que tuvimos que tomar en tiempos de pandemia. Yo quiero agradecerle a mis colegas y quienes nos han antecedido en el uso de la palabra, porque efectivamente hay un claro conocimiento de Panamá y su sistema bancario y su sistema financiero en su conjunto. Yo quisiera en este momento pues aprovechar y quizás algunos temas los voy a pasar de largo porque creo que Carlos Vergido hizo una precisión muy importante y queremos pues que la información que le podamos compartir desde la Superintendencia de Bancos sea, digamos, más bien un complemento a lo que muy bien Carlos Vergido tuvo a bien mostrarnos hace un momento. Con eso dicho, yo creo que podríamos decir que deberíamos dar un pequeño repaso de cómo está compuesto el sistema financiero panameño. Y el sector está constituido por múltiples instituciones financieras que incluyen bancos, empresas de valores, seguros, reaseguros, y otros con activos que totalizan por el orden de 144.457 millones de dólares, correspondiendo el 92% de ese gran total al sistema bancario. El proceso de regulación y de supervisión de estos entes recae en entidades especializadas que velan porque este proceso de supervisión se haga de la mejor manera y apegado a los más altos estándares internacionales. Esto obviamente responde a la competitividad y buen desempeño que recae tener y que requerimos tener en sistemas financieros como el nuestro. Esto es un elemento fundamental, ya que al no contar con un banco central, Panamá lo convierten en una jurisdicción con características muy especiales, que refuerza la necesidad de tener estándares de calidad internacional. Vamos a pasar muy rápidamente estas diapositivas porque creo que ya fueron pues de alguna manera presentadas. Y vamos a irnos, digamos, a esta diapositiva. El resultado anterior, en términos, digamos, de las fortalezas que ha tenido el país y la resiliencia que ha tenido en varias crisis, no es casual. Y responde a que en los últimos años Panamá ha enfocado en fortalecer su sistema financiero, exigiendo la combinación de una adecuada política prudencial garantizada con una eficaz disciplina de mercado, junto con el diseño de políticas que favorecieran la estabilidad necesaria para mitigar riesgos inesperados. Dentro de los elementos claves en este proceso se encuentran el fortalecimiento de los indicadores financieros más relevantes, como lo son los niveles de liquidez y los niveles de solvencia o adecuación de capital. Habiendo dicho esto, puedo mencionarles que la liquidez del sistema bancario a este momento alcanzó a septiembre de 2021 un 63.6%, siendo que la mayor parte de los bancos mantienen niveles superiores, disculpen, a los registrados antes del inicio de la pandemia, lo cual responde a una estrategia integral por mantener disponibilidad de fondos ante cualquier evento de tensión. Por su parte, el índice de adecuación de capital sobre los activos ponderados por riesgo fue de 16.14 para el cierre del primer trimestre del 2021, demostrando una fortaleza patrimonial, lo cual resulta en cualquier tiempo, pero más en estos tiempos, una gran fortaleza. Esto se debe a un mayor crecimiento del patrimonio efectivo en relación con los requerimientos regulatorios. Este incremento se puede explicar tanto por la capitalización de utilidades y la emisión de instrumentos de capital secundario de algunas entidades. Actualmente, todos los bancos en operación cumplen satisfactoriamente con los nuevos estándares regulatorios en materia de capital bancario. El principal objetivo de la Superintendencia de Banco es velar por la solidez y la eficiencia del sistema bancario y para ello ejecuta inspecciones ordenadas por la ley bancaria, por la junta directiva y aquellas que considere necesarias y prudentes. En este sentido, y como parte de nuestro proceso de supervisión, la superintendencia cuenta con 3 áreas especializadas para que dicha labor con enfoque a riesgo incluyen, entre otros, el tema de supervisión prudencial, la gestión integral de riesgos y la prevención de operaciones ilícitas, entre ellas el blanqueo de capitales. Es importante destacar que la regulación y la supervisión bancaria está siendo adecuada para permitir próximamente la participación de nuevos actores como lo son las empresas de tecnología aplicada a las finanzas para mejorar la competitividad del centro bancario y están adecuándose a nuevas formas también de operaciones de los bancos tradicionales que están viendo en la banca digital una oportunidad importante. Todo esto enmarcados, digamos, en su momento a nuevas licencias. Sin embargo, la actual ley bancaria permite el establecimiento de bancos, por ejemplo, digitales, bajo las reglas que hoy día también se le aplican a la banca tradicional. En materia de normas de auditoría y de información financiera internacional, en Panamá estas se aplican desde el año 2005 y ha sido probablemente una de sus principales fortalezas, dada la comparabilidad que tienen los reportes financieros del sistema bancario panameño con respecto a los reportes financieros en las principales plazas financieras del mundo. Esto es un elemento que le ha dado a Panamá esa posibilidad, digamos, de comparar y que nuestra información sea lo suficientemente transparente y comparable con los principales o los más altos estándares internacionales. El proceso de supervisión bancaria ha evolucionado a la par de las buenas prácticas internacionales desarrollados por los principios de Basilea, los cuales buscan anticiparse a los riesgos tanto micro como macrofinancieros. En este sentido, hemos desarrollado en los últimos años una clara hoja de ruta regulatoria para dar cumplimiento a estas recomendaciones. En los últimos años, y a pesar de la pandemia, se han dado pasos importantes para que el sistema funcione en un entorno más exigente a estos estándares internacionales. En este sentido, las regulaciones de los bancos se han alineado en gran parte con Basilea III, con la introducción de regulaciones de capital y de liquidez para los grupos bancarios, lo cual es un paso importante para fortalecer la supervisión de conglomerados financieros y nos convierte en una plaza a la par de las normativas más elevadas en materia de estos estándares. Al día de hoy, 6 grupos bancarios regionales consolidan sus operaciones en Panamá, convirtiéndose la superintendencia de bancos en el supervisor de origen de dichos grupos bancarios. No puedo dejar pasar por alto lo relacionado con los temas que tienen que ver con las listas internacionales, en la cual desafortunadamente nos encontramos. Desde la inclusión de Panamá en la lista de jurisdicciones con deficiencias en sus marcos de prevención de blanqueo de capitales y financiamiento del terrorismo, en junio del 2014, las mejoras al cambio regulatorio, al marco legal y regulatorio han sido sustantivas. Panamá promulgó una serie de normativas como leyes, decretos ejecutivos, reglamentos, resoluciones que fortalecen el marco normativo y regulatorio de prevención, lo cual demuestra que el país ha tomado con suma responsabilidad el establecimiento de normas internacionales emitidas sobre la materia. Este nuevo marco regulatorio ha significado nuevos desafíos institucionales para adaptar el resto del sector financiero a los estándares de regulación y de supervisión en materia de prevención del blanqueo de capitales. Sin embargo, si bien el sistema financiero en su conjunto ha venido haciendo las adecuaciones pertinentes, todavía se requieren adecuaciones en el sistema no financiero, ya que las evaluaciones por parte de organismos internacionales como Gafi responden al país en su conjunto. Puedo compartirles que para el periodo 2021 al 2023 hemos visualizado la emisión de importantes regulaciones vinculadas al cumplimiento de los estándares internacionales. En ese sentido, estimamos emitir normas sobre titularizaciones, riesgo de tasa de interés del libro bancario, colchón de conservación de capital, pruebas de tensión que deben realizar las entidades bancarias y el proceso de autoevaluación de capital, conocido por sus siglas en inglés como ICAP, y la actualización de la regulación en materia de gobierno corporativo. La emisión gradual y paulatina de estas normas, basadas en el estándar internacional de Basilea, tiene como objetivo el fortalecer el capital de los bancos de manera tal que el capital regulatorio generado sea suficiente para afrontar los riesgos a los cuales están expuestas las instituciones bancarias. Para concluir, quiero destacar que a pesar de la pandemia y los retos que hemos discutido, el Centro Bancario Internacional de Panamá continúa mostrando signos claros de estabilidad, de seguridad, de confianza y de solidez, al igual que los niveles de liquidez y de capitalización, los cuales se mantienen robustos, superando, como lo dijimos anteriormente, el doble de lo requerido por ley, lo cual permite generar esa tradicional e histórica confianza y estabilidad en sus operaciones. Gracias por la oportunidad que le han brindado a la Superintendencia de Bancos y muy dispuestos y a su disposición para cualquier pregunta. Embajadora.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Amaury, for your presentation. I think it sheds light on some of the questions that we have been receiving in the chat. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to send them to us. And I would like now to have a conversation with all of the participants, because some of you have raised very important points throughout the presentation. And so Mr. Moser was talking about all of those big new infrastructure projects that Panama is going to have in action moving forward, that total over $1.9 billion in potential investments. So an opportunity for financing surely will arise from all of that. And he also remarked on our banking sector being a very attractive one in terms of financial services and the performance that the financial service sector in Panama has had, which has positioned it as one of the best in Latin America, which goes to the point that Carlos Vergido was saying about trust of local and foreign investors into the banking sector, shown by the rise in the deposits and the resiliency of the financial banking sector in Panama, and the growth that it has shown during the pandemic even. So that goes to the point of trust again. And the fact that Panama's location is so exceptional to access wealth and trade throughout Latin America. It's also a very valid point that Carlos was saying. Recognizing the growth potential of Panama's GDP, projected to be 12% for this year and 8% for next year, certainly talks about, again, that trust in Panama and investing in Panama. And then Amaury was making some very important points on regulation, because I think that that's high in the mind of investors, is how the financial services sector works in Panama and how the superintendency applies the Basel rules and how it compares with the most advanced services centers in the world in terms of finance, regarding financial reports, for instance. And the excellent offer of the banking sector that is now going to grow, adding new players through fintech and through digital banking opportunities that will arise in this sector in the future. So you have an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of these developments going forward. So we have a few questions from our audience that have to do with all of the things that I've just mentioned. And Felipe Leonardo Sanchez wants to know what new digital banks are coming to Panama, or if there are any already underway. So I think that that question will go to either Carlos or Amaury in terms of what new digital banks are coming to Panama. Ernesto Reyes, I must say, is filling in for Minister Rojas, who was called by the president. So if you also want to comment something about the digital banking from the digital hub perspective, Ernesto, I don't know who wants to start. Amaury, Carlos, Ernesto, with this question, wants to take it?
I yield graciously to
Thank you,
my
Ambassador.
regulator.
Amaury, then it goes to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. At this time, I don't have in Panama specifically a digital bank, but most of those digital banks established around the world ask to us about what is exactly the regulatory environment that we have to do this kind of business in Panama. But some banks established in Panama have a digital bank. And that is a very good news, because the regulatory environment give the proper way to do this kind of business. The situation at this time is that if a non-banking institution want to do this kind of business, at this time we don't have any regulation to establish exactly what is the rules and the regulation to comply. But I think that in the near future, and I said in my presentation, we are adapting to do this kind of activity in Panama. I don't know if Carlos, you want to add some comments about that.
Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, the view from the Banking Association is very pro-business. We have no problem at all whatsoever. In fact, we welcome a growth of the fintech industry in Panama. We welcome it, definitely, as we understand that fintech is perhaps one of the tools, the whole digital management of the financial activity is perhaps one of the most important tools at our disposal to achieve a fuller integration, a fuller inclusion of the country, of the population into the financial and banking system. And that is key for the well-being of the population. It is important to note, as the superintendent mentioned before, many of the already established traditional banks in Panama have outstanding digital platforms already that have done a lot, that have grown leaps and bounds during the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, in incorporating hundreds of thousands of people who were previously excluded from the formal financial system, and now do digital transactions all over the country. For us, the most important thing when thinking about fintech, though, is there is a usually very thin line between what is a bank and what is a financial institution. And that usually is resolved about the question of whether the institution takes deposits from the public. When you start taking deposits from the public, then you need a regulation in place that is adequate to the risk of insolvency, the risk of intermediation that exists and is inherent in any banking activity. When you take deposits from a public that expects those deposits to be returned as they demand them according to contract, that makes it very different from an entity that is taking funds in other types of circumstances not equal to a deposit, to a demand deposit or a time deposit. And that distinction between what is a deposit and what is not a deposit, I think it is key to develop the correct framework, regulatory framework, in order to be able to attract all those fintech companies that are going to be definitely part of the present and definitely part of the future, as Panama goes for the goal of including, hopefully, 100% of its population in the benefits of participating in the financial sector.
Yes, we have a few more questions on this issue of fintech, but I'm going to go to a question from Juan Francisco Pardini, and welcome Juancho to the floor. What is the role of Santander in public-private partnerships? So Charles, that goes to you.
Thanks. No, it's a tremendous opportunity. We obviously look to bring capital to Panama and intermediate it. That's what Santander does, as well as lending into these opportunities. So private PPPs that have government offtake contracts are very interesting for us to lend into, or it's very interesting for us to securitize the obligations resulting from those projects. So in the immediate future, that's kind of where we see the biggest opportunity, and there's an awful lot to do there.
Excellent. We have another question about helping to finance development countries from Panama. And this one goes also to a comment that we received from Enrique Do Barrio, reminding us that recently the World Bank has expanded operations regionally through Panama, and also the CAF, the Latin American Bank, it's moving its headquarters to Panama. So this one would go to all of you. How do you see Panama as a player in helping finance development in other countries in the region? I don't know, maybe Amaury, if you want to take this one, or Carlos.
Maybe I'll take the chance this time. Okay, I think there are, besides inclusion, besides financial inclusion, which is we have already spoken about as a key to development, I believe not only in Panama, but also in most of Latin America, there is a lack of easy to obtain, easy to ask for financing directed to the small, medium enterprise sector. I believe, and we have seen along in the association, when you are an employed person, it's relatively easy to get a loan. And when you're a big enterprise, it's very easy to get a loan. When you are an entrepreneur, especially those with medium and small size scale, it becomes burdensome in order to qualify for loans. Therefore, I think one of the homeworks that we have is how to develop credit facilities that are focused and specialized in that sector, which is key for the development of any country, especially ours in Latin America, but that is able to achieve that financing efficiently, fast, with requirements that are easy to comply with for small companies that sometimes don't have the armies of lawyers and accountants and consultants that are the luxury of the big ones, or don't have the secure income that guarantees the loans, which is the case of most employees. So that is a challenge that at the same time, I believe is a huge opportunity, not only in Panama, but I think it's a huge opportunity in all Latin America. How to bring that lending expertise that is so common in the US or Canada or Europe or East Asia, and try how to bring that expertise to lending efficiently to small, medium enterprise sector. Okay, that's one thing. And the other thing is, and perhaps a complement to the previous one, is we have to develop credit enhancement facilities that also work efficient. For what? Credit enhancement facilities that are designed with the help of guarantees from the state or from international multilateral organizations, perhaps, to help unlock the many millions of dollars of liquidity that is present in the system, in Panama currently, certainly, probably in Latin America as well. How to unlock the willingness of creditors to lend to marginally higher risk debtors, both on the personal side and especially in the commercial side. With all the availability of credit that we have in Panama, we have found during the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, that even though the country requires lending in order to get out of this situation, we would definitely benefit from an institutional support mechanism that provides that enhancement in terms of a credit sharing, credit risk sharing facility that is so common in the European countries and was such a key in the development of Europe in the post-war period, which became, the most prosperity-driven area of the whole history of the Western world. We have to develop that sort of institution. I know some Latin American countries already have those institutions that work very well and with very good track record, but we don't have one in Panama. And that is also a huge area of opportunity. It's a challenge and it's an area of opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Charles, I don't know if you want to comment a little bit from the international perspective. Do you see Panama as being a potential player in Latin America for aiding our financing projects in other countries?
I think Panama is a very attractive hub, which is the reason we see CAF and others moving to Panama, just in terms of stability and safety and dollarization and so forth. And so it's a natural place from which to kind of center your headquarters if you're going to be covering a fair amount of the region. But also there's an ample deposit base that's looking for interesting investment opportunities. And so I think in that sense also, in as much as the Panamanian banks decide to move outside the Panamanian border and the regulators comfortable that they're doing it in a safe and prudent way, there is capital that can flow from Panama as well towards the rest of the region. So first, it's got the geographical advantage and the stability advantage and the language advantage that makes it the perfect place to put your headquarters for the region. But then there's also capital that can move from Panama to other countries in the region.
Yes, and certainly one of those players that is taking a bigger role in investment are the family offices. And I think that could be interesting to tap into as a resource in the future. And there is a lot of questions in our chat regarding this cryptocurrency tendency that is sweeping the region. So Amaury and Carlos, how do you see this these new trends as cryptocurrency and fintech being promoted in Panama? What can be done? What is done? What is being done? If you could provide specific examples, they are asking for them.
Bueno, thank you, Ambassador. Yes, probably this is a very important topic, but in terms of the crypto asset, we are learn about this kind of asset. We are learning about it, and also we are waiting for the final decision in a financial market that have more bigger than us and more experienced than us. So this is, we understand in the superintendency of banks that this is a reality. We need to regulate with some flexible, but at this time, we don't have any decision. For doing that, I think that it's very important, and we work on that to improve the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure in terms of electronic payment system. As I mentioned in my presentation, we don't have a central bank. And for this, and for that reason, specifically for that reason, probably was a handicap to improve our electronic payment system. But now we are working in a legal framework to establish that electronic payment system in Panama with clear rules. And having that, I think that open the opportunity for a lot of enterprise or companies, specifically for fintech that is dealing with payments.
Now, going into that point that you just
made, the infrastructure is very, very important to, and probably the international experience that Charles also give us a support to doing that.
Good, because going to that point, I have a question here that is very specific, and Hugo Gant is asking about, would Panama consider to develop platform to use blockchain for the financial service sector from the government perspective. I don't know, Ernesto or Amaury, if you have any idea of anything like that being done, or if that would be something interesting to do in order to use blockchain for the financial service sector in Panama.
My personal opinion is absolutely yes.
Yes, and
actually the legal framework draft that I'm working now is open to any technology. So I
Yes.
think that, yes, blockchain has opportunity to improve our financial sector.
And definitely, Carmen, we're already using and testing the blockchain technology in some processes that we're digitalizing in the government, not necessarily have to do with the financial sector, but internal processes that the government has and that the citizens in the near future will be able to use. So we're definitely testing the blockchain technology.
Very good. Well, we have a question from Domingo Latorraca, and welcome, Domingo, also. And this one is directed to the Superintendency of Banks, and he would like to know the latest data on what has been affected in terms of deposits and reserves in the financial service sector here in Panama due to COVID-19. And I think you covered that in your presentation, Amaury. So if you could please refresh how the banking sector was affected by COVID and what is being done in order to recover what was affected.
Thank you, Domingo. Well, yes, this is the main challenge that we have until the pandemic starts. So obviously Panama probably was the country that more longer established some measure to support the to the consumer, the financial consumer. And normally the banking regulator established measures to preserve the financial stability of the banking sector. But in addition, we have the law obligation to preserve the depositors, the fund come from the depositors. So saying that at this time we are working to be more comfort in terms of the provision that the banks will to establish in order to this or possible yes, credit losses in terms of in order to the credit risk. So and at this time we are working in a new rule, but it doesn't matter because we try to make to be sure that the banks we are apply correctly the international accounting rules that in Spanish, las normas internacionales de información financiera, because Yes, because as I mentioned, we have NIF in the financial report from all the banks in Panama. So we try now, Domingo, to be sure that the banks calculate appropriately this provision. That's right.
Thank you so much, Amaury. And there's several questions about what Panama is doing to lessen the effects of GAFI and the gray list. And you mentioned that in your presentation, but probably also, Carlos, from the association perspective, you can comment to ease the public on the many things that Panama is actually doing in order to get ourselves out of those lists. So I don't know which one of you wants to take it first, but please go ahead.
Gladly, Ambassador. Listen, Panama's banking sector and on the wider financial sector, including insurance and the capital markets sector, have for many years led the way in the direction of adopting and the highest anti-money laundering standards in the world. What we have tried to do in the current climate is try to create awareness among the other sectors of the economy in terms of trying to get them up to the standard that is already prevalent and required of financial institutions in Panama for many years. This has been widely recognized by all the organizations such as FATF and OECD and even the European Union. The problem with being included in the lists, in the gray list or the black list, however they are called, is not really a problem that stems from problems in the financial sector. It has been properly identified, and I believe that we have played a role as the Banking Association in supporting the government of Panama, which has a strong commitment for many years and a commitment that was restated very firmly since last year, since 2019, when the President Cortizo took the oath of office, to get out of those lists, not just by making noise, but by really doing the homework that needs to be done to get out and stay out of the list. This being in those lists harms our reputation, unjustly so, unfairly so, and we need to make sure that we're not included in those lists anymore. And in order to do that, we need to make the homework. And I believe strongly in the Panamanian government's commitment to do that homework. And we're witnessing that the recent passage of a very important law, number 624, if I'm not wrong, in the month of October, was passed in order to raise the standards of compliance in the wider economic sectors. And I believe we will achieve that objective of being taken out of those lists, and most importantly, to remain out of those lists as we should always. Thank you.
Amaury, I don't know if you want to comment further on that.
No, it's just to make an emphasis that the main areas or topics that we are tending to comply is in the non-financial sector. But again, as I mentioned in my presentation, this is a country evaluation, including the financial and a non-financial sector. So At this time, I think that the financial sector do their jobs, the tasks from many years ago. But now we need to do and strengthen the control in terms of our international platform, in terms of the corporates and some corporations. So I think that this is the main issue that we have at this time. As Carlos mentioned, that is very important to stay out of this list and other lists. Not only the Panama, the European Union as well, to fiscal issues. That is in terms of the AML. So yes, as a government part of government, we understand that it's relevant, Ambassador, to do everything to stay out of this of those lists. So that's true. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all. I want to turn the floor now to William for some final remarks, and then I'll do just some very brief closing remarks. And so, William, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, I think that the timing post-COVID for this event, when I say post-COVID, looks like the tail end, we hope, of the COVID situation. Couldn't be best to have these panel speakers and address all these questions, good questions that have been asked. From the perspective of the Panama U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we recognize the importance and the interest that Panama holds in the international community in the areas of banking and finance. And there is a lot of interest to understand, explore what organizations, multilateral organizations, financial institutions, how they can participate and expand into Panama. We've recognized and identified that given the situation and coming out of COVID, there is a lot of particular interest in Panama. And as mentioned earlier, is not just from a transaction standpoint of U.S.-Panama banking needs, but international organizations and multilateral organizations interest in Panama to establish themselves as a hub into throughout Latin American region. So I'm very enthused with this conversation and the great questions put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And I would like to thank all of the panelists for their participation this morning. All of your remarks are right on point with the government strategy for investment attraction into Panama. And the banking sector is certainly one that helps support the investment attraction. Every investor needs, the first thing that they ask is, how can I open a bank account and where can I open a bank account in Panama? So fortunately, we have many options for them to choose from in an environment that, as you have all commented, is transparent and follows international rules compared to the reports that are filed in bigger financial service centers than Panama. So I think that the fact that the deposits and the actual assets in the service sector grew during the pandemic speaks volumes towards the trust from the local and international investors into Panama. So on behalf of Pro-Panama and the government of Panama, we would like to invite you all to explore the many business opportunities that Panama has to offer, not only in the logistics, digital or food development hubs, in tourism or in energy, but also to see the financial services sector not only as a way of helping your investment grow in Panama, but as an investment opportunity itself. Because as you can see, Panama is moving forward into the digital world, and in terms of banking, also through digital services. And there will be many opportunities for fintech, Bitcoin, and all of the new tendencies in the financial services world. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. We hope you have enjoyed the participants, and all of the information shared with you this morning will be useful in making your decision for your next investment. So thank you very much to everybody for participating, and to Panus, our partner, thank you so much for helping us put together this event. For everybody, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you all.